President Lee Jae-myung held a summit with his Egyptian counterpart in Cairo and addressed regional peace and economic ties. He also delivered a speech at Cairo University and unveiled South Korea's initiative to expand its ties across the Middle East. As tensions between Beijing and Tokyo continue to escalate, the cultural ministers' meeting that was originally scheduled to take place this month between South Korea, China, and Japan has now been postponed. After 17 hours of firefighting, the forest fire in Injae-gun County, Gangwon-do Province has finally been extinguished. Around 30 helicopters were deployed this morning after the fire broke out in the region on Thursday evening. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today with President Lee Jae-myung's trip to Egypt. He sat down for talks with his Egyptian counterpart and agreed to cooperate on regional peace and economic ties. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jang-min is traveling with the president and files this report from Cairo.
The Korea-Egypt summit began with an official welcome by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for visiting President Lee Jae-myung at the presidential palace in Cairo. During the nearly 2-hour-long talks on Thursday, the two leaders addressed regional peace.
한국과 이집트는 평화 촉진자로서 한반도와 중동을 포함한 국제 평화에 함께 기여하기로 하였습니다.
We agreed upon the need to deepen global peace and support for peace in the Middle East and on the Korean Peninsula.
The main idea of interest was bolstering a bilateral partnership as the two countries celebrate 30 years of diplomatic ties. South Korea and Egypt will work together on the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, to expand bilateral economic partnership.
세파는 광범위한 경제 협력을 뒷받침할 중요한 제도적 기반이 될 것입니다.
AI, communications as well as science and ICT are important in particular.
President Lee expressed hopes that the two countries also cooperate on the defense industry such as F-A-50 aircraft, building upon their joint production of the K-9 self-propelled howitzer. MOUs were signed to bolster cooperation on culture and education. Concluding the Korea-Egypt summit, President Lee will head to South Africa to attend the G20 summit for talks on sustainable growth and fairness at a time of increasing global uncertainties. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News, Cairo.
And after a summit with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung also delivered a lecture at Cairo University. There, he presented the administration's vision for the broader Middle East. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
Peace, prosperity, and culture. These are the three pillars of President Lee Jae-myung's Middle East strategy, unveiled during his lecture at Cairo University on Thursday, one of the oldest and largest universities in the region.
샤인 이니셔티브를 제안드리고자 합니다. S는 스테빌리티, 안정을, H는 하모니, 조화를, I는 이노베이션, 혁신을, N은 네트워크를, E는 에듀케이션, 교육을 뜻합니다.
For stability and harmony, Lee announced that South Korea will contribute $10 million to the Egyptian Red Crescent Society to support humanitarian efforts in Gaza. He praised Egypt's leadership in mediating the Israel-Hamas ceasefire and said South Korea will join President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's Gaza reconstruction plan. Moving to innovation, Lee promised tailored cooperation designed to support the economic development of each Middle Eastern partner.
에너지, 건설 분야 협력을 공고히 하는 한편 인공지능, 수소 등 미래 혁신 분야로 협력의 지평을 확대하겠다는 약속을 드립니다.
He says it's now South Korea's turn to give back, highlighting how the country's rapid development was made possible by economic ties with the Middle East, including oil, natural gas, and large-scale construction partnerships. For network and education, the president emphasized the power of people-to-people exchange.
사람과 사람이 자주 만나는 것만큼 서로의 문화를 함께 배우며 성장하는 일만큼 양국의 우호 관계를 단단하게 만들 동력은 없습니다.
For this, Yi vowed to expand university exchange programs, increase scholarships and training opportunities, and create more pathways for Middle Eastern students to study in Korea. He also pledged to broaden cultural cooperation across food, fashion, beauty, and history to deepen mutual understanding. President Yi concluded his nearly 20-minute speech by calling on the young audience to play a leading role in making the Shine Initiative truly shine in real life. 송유진, Arirang News.
And while in Cairo, President Lee Jae-myung also met with members of the Korean community in Egypt on Thursday. Reflecting on a summit with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi earlier in the day, President Lee says Seoul and Cairo will significantly expand cooperation across culture, the economy, and defense. He added that the Korean community's role and presence in Egypt will expand as bilateral ties deepen. He also expressed his determination to establish a direct flight route between South Korea and Egypt. This was the first meeting of its kind between a South Korean president and the Korean community in Egypt since 2006. Meanwhile, South Korea confirmed that this month's Trilateral Culture Ministers meeting with Japan and China has been postponed. Now, this comes as Beijing intensifies pressure on Tokyo over Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks, suggesting that a Taiwan contingency could allow Japan to exercise collective self-defense. Beijing notified Seoul on Tuesday that the trilateral meeting, scheduled for next Monday in Macau, would be postponed. It did not provide an official reason, but separately, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has expressed strong discontent linked to Takaichi's comments. The annual meeting has been held since 2007 to support cultural exchange among the three countries. With government-to-government exchanges showing strain, observers say continued tensions could delay Japan's push to host the next trilateral leaders meeting. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he expects to speak to President Donald Trump in the coming days, after the United States presented Ukraine with a draft peace plan to end the war with Russia. However, the proposal has been met with backlash from Ukrainian officials, as it will require Kyiv to make significant concessions. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Ukraine says it is preparing to enter negotiations with the United States on a new peace proposal that would require Kyiv to make significant concessions in order to end Russia's invasion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed on Thursday that his office has received a draft plan backed by Washington and Moscow. He added that he expects to speak directly with U.S. President Donald Trump in the coming days about what he called existing diplomatic opportunities and the core points needed for a durable peace. In a statement, Zelenskyy's office also said both sides have agreed to study and refine the plan so that it can lead to what they described as a worthy end to the war. The cautious tone marks a shift from earlier reactions within Ukraine's government, where several officials strongly criticized the proposal. They called the reported concessions absurd and unacceptable, warning that the plan could undermine Ukraine's security and sovereignty. Zelenskyy's remarks came as a meeting was held in Kyiv with a senior U.S. military delegation led by Army Secretary Dan Driscoll. Ukrainian officials said the talks focused on battlefield needs, ongoing support, and the broader diplomatic environment surrounding the peace discussions. Meanwhile, the White House confirmed that senior Trump administration officials held talks with Ukrainian representatives over the past week. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff took part in those meetings.
Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally to understand what these countries would commit to in order to see a lasting and durable peace.
For now, Ukraine says it is reviewing the details of the proposal and preparing for direct talks with Washington, while international attention remains focused on how far Kyiv may be willing to go in the pursuit of peace. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
With the dry season coming back and with winds picking up, authorities are now on high alert for wildfires. Overnight, a battle between the authorities and a forest fire in Gangwon-do province continued, with the authorities saying the main fire was put out this morning. Our Kim Do-yeon has latest.
Authorities have worked through the night to contain the wildfire that erupted near a military unit in Injaegun County, Gangwon-do province at around 5:20 p.m. on Thursday. By 11 a.m. Friday, it had been completely extinguished. The Korea Forest Service stated that ground operations faced significant difficulties overnight. The fire, which reportedly started in a container used as a temporary shelter before spreading to the adjacent mountain, moved into rugged terrain where access is difficult. While no casualties have been reported and the resident of the container was out at the time, 12 residents from 8 nearby households were evacuated to local senior centers as a precaution. This blaze marks the first time a level 1 wildfire response has been issued this autumn season. Updated assessments estimate the fire has affected an area of approximately 34.5 hectares, roughly the size of 40 soccer fields. The total fire line spans 3.7 kilometers. By sunrise, full-scale operations resumed, having been scaled back overnight. 29 helicopters were deployed to the scene. Although heavy fog initially hampered visibility, wind conditions remained favorable with a weak northeasterly breeze, and authorities were optimistic about extinguishing the main fire by the morning. The danger, however, is not isolated to Inje. Wildfire risks are escalating across the country due to prolonged dry weather. Just on Thursday, at least 6 wildfires were reported across Gangwon-do, Gyeonggi-do, and Chungcheongnam-do provinces. Dry weather advisories have been in effect for nearly a week on the East Coast, with gusts of around 20 meters per second forecast for the mountainous regions. These are the same regions that faced the massive wildfire earlier this year centered around Andong. Authorities warn that with the current conditions, even a small spark can lead to a disaster, and are urging the public to refrain from burning waste or using fire near mountain areas. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the economic front, South Korea's producer prices rose for the second consecutive month in October, driven by a strong dollar and surging semiconductor prices. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the producer price index climbed 0.2% on month to 120.82. While the overall pace of growth slowed compared to September, prices for industrial goods rose 0.5%. Now, this was largely fueled by the tech sector, with DRAM prices jumping over 28% and flash memory spiking more than 41% amid recovering demand. In contrast, prices for agricultural and marine products fell by over 4%. The central bank attributes the overall rise to the exchange rate and chip prices, noting that total domestic supply prices have reached their highest level in a year and a half. An e-commerce giant, Coupang, has reported a data leak that exposed the personal information of about 4,500 customers. According to the company on Thursday, an outside party gained unauthorized access on Tuesday to delivery-related data connected to the affected accounts. A notification text sent to customers said the leaked information includes names, email addresses, phone numbers, and saved delivery addresses. Coupang stressed that there is no evidence of any access to payment information, adding its internal systems and networks were not breached. Authorities have been notified, and Coupang says it's cooperating fully with the government as the investigation continues. And South Korea's total fertility rate reached 0.75 last year, and even with a slight rise in the number of newborns, it remains one of the lowest in the world. An international framework gaining renewed attention is UNICEF's Child-Friendly Cities initiative, which encourages local governments to embed children's rights, safety, and participation in all areas of urban policy. Our Pyeongyang has more.
A city where children are not only protected, but also heard, respected, and actively involved in shaping their communities. Under UNICEF guidelines, cities must show sustained progress in child participation in decisions that affect them, safety, access to culture and play, and child rights-based governance before receiving official child-friendly city certification. Over the past decade, South Korea's first child-friendly city, Seongbuk-gu, has expanded its youth councils, strengthened child participation and budgeting, and opened new child-centered community spaces. One of those spaces is the Seongbuk Youth Center, where young people gather to debate issues, draft proposals, and develop practical civic projects.
There are already many educational programs for children in Seongbuk-gu, but I think it's even more meaningful when children themselves can propose the kinds of education they feel they need.
Because places like the Youth Culture Center provide a safe environment with instructors and support for a variety of activities, I can really feel that Seongbuk-gu district respects and supports children in a meaningful way.
Here, children also learn confidence, communication skills, and the sense that their opinions matter.
The different experiences and encouragement they receive here will eventually become valuable resources in their lives when they need them. And importantly, they are no longer seen simply as beneficiaries in need of help, but as key members of the community who live and grow alongside us, and that's the foundation of creating a truly child-friendly culture.
UNICEF says the true measure of a child-friendly city lies in rights-based governance that treats children as full citizens, a priority made even more urgent by Korea's low birth rate.
Given the era of extremely low birth rates, creating child-friendly cities carries significance not only for advancing children's rights, but also as a key strategy for ensuring the long-term sustainability of our society and our country.
With more municipalities joining the initiative, South Korea aims to raise children on a foundation of respect and build communities where their voices are genuinely heard. Hyun-yeong, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the United States, the White House has firmly rejected claims from South Africa that Washington was reversing its boycott of the upcoming G20 summit in Johannesburg. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Thursday that the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was, quote, running his mouth, insisting the U.S. position had not changed. Washington says it will not participate in any G20 talks and is only sending a U.S. Embassy representative to attend the formal handover ceremony as the United States takes over the rotating presidency for next year's summit. Ramaphosa said South Africa will still push ahead with issuing a joint G20 declaration despite U.S. pressure not to adopt one. He said the summit is moving forward and that South Africa will not be bullied with other leaders supporting his agenda. The leaders of China, Russia, and Argentina will not attend, but are sending delegations. In the United States on Wednesday, the Trump administration launched one of its most aggressive immigration operations yet. Over 250 arrests were made in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. The Department of Homeland Security says those detained include gang members and people convicted of crimes ranging from assault on law enforcement to theft. Local officials have condemned the operation, alleging racial profiling, and have warned residents of aggressive federal tactics. Department of Homeland Security has not said how long the raids will continue, while similar crackdowns in cities like Chicago are ongoing. In Brazil on Thursday, a fire abruptly halted the COP30 climate conference in Belém, forcing a full evacuation of the summit's restricted blue zone. Officials say the blaze was contained within 6 minutes, but 13 people were treated for smoke inhalation. The cause of the fire remains under investigation, though authorities are looking at a possible generator failure or short circuit. Negotiations were entering their final hours to reach an agreement on the next steps to address climate change. According to the BBC, the fire likely delayed the closing of that deal. In France on Thursday, the Grevin Museum in Paris unveiled a new Princess Diana wax figure, dressed in her iconic 1994 revenge dress, nearly 3 decades after her fatal crash in the city. Museum officials say the life-size figure was commissioned after a visit to London's Madame Tussauds, and the unveiling coincides with the 30th anniversary of Diana's landmark BBC Panorama interview. The tribute draws on Paris's long-standing public connection to the late Princess of Wales. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
We began the day without any harsh cold, but we are seeing some pretty big temperature swings. Places like Chuncheon dipped below freezing earlier before jumping nearly 15 degrees Celsius later on, so it's a real roller coaster today. And along the East Coast, the air is still very dry, and we'll see strong winds of around 15 to 20 meters per second. And with winds like that, even a tiny spark can spread quickly, so please keep an eye on anything that could start a fire. This afternoon could be a couple of degrees lower than yesterday, so it gets up to 12 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gwangju will make it to 13 degrees under mostly to partly sunny skies. The air quality will be good nationwide all day today. Thankfully, the weather will be perfect for enjoying the late autumn this weekend, so the major expressways will be highly congested again. Meanwhile, rain will move into western regions on Monday, followed by a sharp drop in temperatures on Tuesday.
Now that's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.